Hi, I'm Larry Magid with CBS News, and we're doing an experiment here. This is both a podcast and a Zoom video cast. So if you're listening, know that you can go to larrysworld.com and get a video link if all goes well. I'm with Jonas, and I apologize, Jonas, I didn't get your last name.
Bordo, Jonas Bordo.
Jonas Bordo, and he is a co-founder. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you're doing.
Absolutely, Larry. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dwellsy. Dwellsy is the newest listing service for renters. We are built to help everyone in America find a rental and make it home.
So it's an interesting time when you think about rentals, because we are in a period when house hunting, whether you're buying or renting, is obviously much more problematic than it was before. I just got off the phone with my niece who's managing a condo that she's trying to rent out. Mm-hmm. And going through a lot of conniptions, trying to figure out, does she go there and keep her social distance? They've already put soap and water and sanitizers already for the prospective tenants to kind of be able to walk around. It's a difficult time, I would imagine, both for landlords and people who are looking to rent an apartment or a house.
It's an extremely difficult time for renters and for landlords. You're exactly right, Larry. For renters, so many renters have lost jobs, lost hours, are struggling to pay the rent. Trying to figure out how to stay inside in small spaces is also a big challenge for those who don't have financial hardship at this time. And landlords have a huge amount of uncertainty. What most people don't know is more than 50% of American landlords are individuals, usually middle-class folks who own 1, 2, 3 units. Mm-hmm. That's probably about 75% of the inventory in the U.S.
And often have mortgages to pay. And of course,
they have mortgages, and many of them have lost jobs. Right. And many of them have lost hours, and so rent is all the more important to them as part of their income.
So it's not just the big corporations, there are some, but it's mom and pop operations, it's small businesses, really, very small businesses.
Yeah, very, very small businesses, and a lot of them are struggling.
That's right. So in terms of what Dwellsy can do to help, obviously you have a listing service. So talk to me about your listing service, how it works, how it's monetized, and how people can maybe use it to find or list housing.
Yeah, so our listing service approach is completely different than anything else the industry has seen before. We are attempting to get 100% of listings on the platform, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, we want it to be a completely comprehensive source for renters. We want renters to have a great experience looking for a place to live, and we want them to be able to go to a single place to be able to find all the inventory and not have to go to jillions of different sites on the web, which is what you have to do right now, because there's really nobody in the industry except for Dwellsy who has more than 5 or 10% of the inventory today. So we're really trying to build that destination that helps renters with a great renter-friendly search experience and is a huge help to landlords. We're not charging landlords to list on Dwellsy, which is one of the reasons we think we can get the best inventory in the country. And it also means we're not pushing things to renters that they don't want. On our site, renter is the client, not the product, which is kind of the case for most other sites.
By the way, just as a public service announcement, if anybody watching the video cast saw me touch my face, I did. But I want to assure you, not only have I not been out of the house in 2 weeks, but even this morning, even though I didn't go outside, didn't touch anything, I still washed my hands for 20 seconds singing happy birthday songs twice. I've probably done that 3 or 4 times in the last 2 hours. So I think it's safe, even though it's a bad habit that I am trying to break. But anyway.
Larry, I practiced for 20 minutes before this, not touching my face. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I'm still not able to do it. And I'm having an itch right now because I'm talking about it. But let's talk about showing apartments or houses during this period. Obviously, many people don't want to go out and look. Many landlords don't want to be in a dwelling with another person, even if it's somebody who's about to give them money. Yep. What are people doing?
Yeah, so they're doing a few different things. Number one, I would just reassure everybody that it can be done. You can securely and safely rent an apartment without actually going and visiting. You just have to be careful. First, everyone starts with internet research. Make sure you know the sites you're on. Sites like Dwellsy that offer verified listings are great places to start.
And again, I love Craigslist, but there are some problems with Craigslist. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Craigslist has been a bit of a scary place in recent years, particularly on the rental side. The fraudsters have discovered that there's a lot of money out there to be had from scamming renters, and a lot of renters have gotten really badly hurt.
I had a friend who was invited to rent an apartment sight unseen at a really good price, and suggested maybe not such a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would suggest one of the main things to watch out for is the rent too good to be true?
Hmm.
Because it probably is. If you're seeing
Yeah.
something that is 30 or 40% off what you know that apartment or that rental home should rent for, give it a pass.
Well, how
Yeah.
are you able to keep the fraudsters under control from on your side? Because they're still out there and they may try to use your service.
Yeah, yeah. So right now, we have a variety of different tools that we've got in place. Number one, all of the listings on our site are coming from data feeds from property management software used by landlords. So
Hmm.
we have a direct connection to those systems. So that brings multiple layers of security. At this time, you cannot just go to Dwellsy, log in, and create a listing like you can on Craigslist.
Okay.
We're going to put all kinds of security precautions in place before we open that up. But right now, Dwellsy doesn't have any of that really risky inventory, so that makes it much safer. Then we have all kinds of rules on the back end to make sure that we are then going through the listings to make sure that the ones that are coming across are safe and secure. So, for example, what are the odds a landlord has a place in New York and Chicago and Miami and LA? Often the fraudsters will do something like that. So
Yeah.
that's one of the kinds of things that we look for. So
Right.
we're constantly combing through and constantly rejecting listings, even though our source material is much more secure than for most sites.
Yeah. And again, you mentioned ways in which you can safely rent, either rent to live in or rent out
Mm-hmm.
a dwelling during
Yep.
this period. Give me some examples of how you might do that from both the landlord and tenant side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the best tools we have is the phone in our pocket for that. One of my favorite things that I've seen landlords encouraging and renters doing is the landlord walkthrough. So then the landlord is the only person who's walking through the unit, who's the only person who's touching the doorknob, but they can actually take you on a video chat, through a FaceTime or another tool, whatever you're comfortable with, and they can show you what the shower looks like when you turn it on, how the
Mhm.
water pressure is. They can show you what happens when you open the dishwasher, how much room is left in the kitchen.
Mhm.
They can show you all those things that normally you might want to do for
Does
yourself.
the toilet flush?
Exactly,
They
exactly.
couldn't necessarily prove that the water is hot, but there's
No,
certain things
that
you
would be
couldn't do.
hard to. I guess you could get them to leave it on long enough to see if there's steam, right?
If it's a gas stove, you might be able to see the flame.
You
Yeah.
could, yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely could.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to not only verify that the landlord has access to the unit, which fraudsters don't usually have access to the unit, and it's also just a great way to make sure it's the kind of place for you. You can
Mhm.
get a really good sense of it from that video tour, that live video tour. So that's a great tool that I think.
I wonder if leases could be modified to this period where you could get like a 30-day, out something if
Hmm.
you weren't happy. I mean, it seems, or of course, at this stage of the game, leases are kind of, who knows? I mean, I have a rental house and I'm hoping
Yeah,
my tenant pays the rent in April, but if he doesn't, I certainly can't evict him, but I wouldn't evict him even if I could,
yeah,
but we'll have a conversation, figure out
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's there's a longer term challenge to tackle of making the experience of renting more like buying other things.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's any reason why it can't be like that. It's just culture and tradition that makes it very different for
Well,
us.
it is. It's certainly different than buying an iPhone,
Yes.
where they're all the same. It's a little closer to buying a car, but even then, if you've seen one model of a car, you know them all. But
Hmm.
again, I think in these extraordinary times, that would make sense. And of course, the other option is to keep your social distance and wipe
Hmm.
everything down, and that's
Yep.
another option as well, but not as safe as what you're describing.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Yep.
so talk to me a little bit about the general issues of, like, you mentioned how the site works. It's pretty straightforward. You go in there and you see a listing. I did that yesterday, but of course, since I'm not looking to rent something, I just left it at that. What
Hmm.
happens if you find one you're really interested in? How do you follow up on the site?
Yeah, so it's very straightforward. There's a process of just submitting an inquiry to the landlord, and it just automatically shows up in their property management software that they have a new inquiry from an interested renter, and then they'll get back to you.
Hmm.
Right now is actually a great time to be looking because, as you might imagine, the inquiry volume from renters is way off. So we've actually been seeing the volume of available listings going up on our site as
Hmm.
more units become available now, which is seasonally normal thing to do, but with coronavirus, everything is off.
So are rents going down for during this period as well?
It's really hard to say. Early look, that seems to be the case, but I think it's too early to say that's conclusively the case.
And what about negotiating? How effective is it if somebody's, let's say, offering an apartment for $3,000 and you can only afford $2,500? Does it make sense to make that offer and see how it goes?
Larry, I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that's always amazed me is how few renters negotiate the rent.
Mm-hmm.
The rent is pretty much always negotiable. And even if the landlord won't budge off the rent number, they might be able to throw in a parking space or free access to the laundry facility, or one of any number of things that might make the place better for you, and the landlord is able to give up. There's lots of different things to negotiate here, and in my experience, almost nobody negotiates. Almost none of the renters negotiate.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, that's been my experience as a landlord. Either they take it or they leave it. It's pretty much
Right.
the situation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember when my house became vacant in 2008, and it was tough. We had to lower the rent and be more, we did what we had to do to attract a tenant. And then later, when the new tenant came in, we still are, by the way, $1,000 below market, because this house is in Silicon Valley and rents here are absolutely insane. What it costs if you're paying market rent. So yes, I agree. This is probably a good time to negotiate if you're a tenant.
Yeah, very much so. Particularly right now with all of the uncertainty around, are people going to be able to pay their rent? Figure out what you can pay and go see your landlord.
Yeah.
They're always open to that conversation, but particularly now they want to make sure that you're able to pay your rent. So if there's an accommodation they can make that is helpful all around, I'm sure they're as open or more open than they usually are.
Now, for those who are watching, are you comfortable doing a screen share and showing us what the site looks like? Is that something you're comfortable with? Go for it.
All right.
See if this works. I don't trust any technology will work, even if they say it will. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll give it a try.
Yeah. Jonas is, there we go. He's launching something. There we go. I see it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you do too.
Yeah.
So there. Okay. So let's say, let's look at, I don't know, Palo Alto.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's probably we're going to see very high rents. What the heck?
Should we look at Palo Alto, or should we go elsewhere in the country?
Yeah, let's go somewhere. How about Stockton?
Stockton, California.
Yeah,
all right.
That's a much more affordable place.
Yeah. So very straightforward. You just start typing the place you want to go, click on it, and up comes the search results for Stockton, and we see everything that's available in the Metro Stockton area.
A lot cheaper than here. I do notice you got price range. They got price range, bed, bath, square feet. So that's great.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm looking for an apartment for under $1,000. Can you? Well, I know you can find me one because I see some.
Under $1,000. Yeah. So we'll do $1,000.
There we go.
Yep.
So all of these.
Yep, all of these.
Now, how do I know the neighborhood, the crime rate, schools, all those kinds of issues?
Yeah, so there's a ton of different sources for things like that. There's sites you can go to, like Great Schools, that will have that. It's early in our development, Larry, so we haven't layered on all of those tools yet. Those are all independently available right now. What we found most renters are looking for is just to know that there's something available. And
so if I'm looking for this one bedroom on Country Club Boulevard, your lower left corner, can I get some more information about that?
Yep.
It's not an image, so unfortunately.
Yeah, and this is a good chance to remind landlords that they're going to be much more successful in renting their units if they provide photos.
Yeah, I see others do have them, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, here you can see, details about the unit, some of the pet amenity characteristics, that they do not allow dogs in this situation.
Right.
It's interesting. A lot of people don't know, but more than half of rentals will allow pets.
Well, it's funny. In our rental house, we do allow dogs and pets, and that's one reason we were able to attract, much easier to attract. And I figured the amount of damage they're going to do is almost certainly covered by the security deposit. Almost. Yep. And so far, haven't had any. We've had human damage. We've never had any pet damage.
The pets are often very well behaved, right?
Pets are better behaved sometimes than the people. Yes.
I just did it. There we go. I washed my hands before this podcast too.
So. Good for you. All right. Any other comments you want to make before? Oh, one thing at the top, you had a verified checklist. What was that when we were in
Yeah,
the search area?
so this is a verified listing, which means we know and can vouch for the source of this listing.
Okay.
And so this is a very safe listing to apply for.
Okay.
You can reach out to the landlord just by using this contact form here.
Mm-hmm.
Just fill it out and send it in. Other things I would mention, one other thing on the site that I think is unique is that you can add different amenities, and we have a wants and needs concept here.
Ah, good idea.
You can say, well,
so I want a hot tub, I need a dishwasher, right?
Exactly, that sort of thing. And that's unique in our space. So, if we add a few amenities, to say, these are all things that we want, then you start showing matches. And what happens when the matches pop up is that there's a Dwellsy match score, which is specific to the renter, and it tells you how well each one of these listings matches what they're looking for.
So this house you're looking at in Montgomery Avenue means it has basically 2/3 of what I was asking for.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it meets your price point, it meets a few other things like that, but it may not have instant hot water, which was
right.
That I
right. Exactly. Well, great. I think we've got a grid tour. I'm hoping that this works out in the video cast. Those on the podcast, you can go to larrysworld.com and get a link to the video. Great. Well, thank you so much for introducing us to Dwellsy.
It's absolutely been a pleasure, Larry. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
Jonas Bordo. Thanks, Jonas.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.